Here I'm going to show you a problem when solving absolute value, what it looks like when you have no solution. And you're not going to just get no answer. You're going to have to recheck it after solving it. Okay, so let's go ahead and the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract. We're going to take the shortcut here and subtract 15 on both sides. We get a negative 3c plus 8, the absolute value, and 15 and 7 is, the difference is a negative 8. Okay, so this is the one I'm going to do twice. So I have a negative 3c plus 8 equals negative 8. And my second problem is going to be negative 3c plus 8 equals a positive 8. Remember, we've got to change the sign of that, okay? So let's go ahead and solve. Subtract 8 on both sides. That gives me a negative 3c. This equals 0. Equals a negative 16. I'm going to divide by a negative 3. And c equals a positive 16 thirds. Okay, once again, subtract 8. Subtract 8. I get a, bring down my negative 3c. That equals 0. Equals 0. Now you still have to put the 0 there, okay? I'm going to divide by negative 3. And c equals, that cancels out. Anytime you have 0 in the numerator, your answer is going to be 0. If 0 is in the denominator, it's going to be no solution. Now, it looks like you have answers, and this is where kids get confused the most. This is the biggest mistake I see people make with absolute value. It's not that you don't know how to solve absolute value. You really need to go back and double check your answers. So I'm going to go back and take this answer here and plug it back into my original problem. Okay? The absolute value of negative 3 times 16 thirds, I know it looks ugly, plus 8 plus 15 equals 7. Now, I know that looks really, really ugly. First of all, you want to say to yourself, you got to solve the absolute value. Negative times a positive will give you a negative. And when you divide 3 and 3, you end up with 16. Plus 8 plus 15 equals 7. Negative 16 plus 8, you still have the absolute value signs. It's different signs, so you take the difference, which is 8, and you take the sign of the larger number, which is 16. Plus 15 equals 7. The absolute value of negative 8 is 8. Plus 15 equals 7, and 15 plus 8 is 23, and as you can see, 23 does not equal 7, so 16 thirds is not in my solution set. Now let's try it with 0. Solving the original problem, negative 3 times 0 plus 8 plus 15 equals 7. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. Rewriting my whole problem. 0 plus 8 is 8. The absolute value is 8 because it's 8 spaces away. Notice I have 8 plus 15 here, 8 plus 15 here. I get the same answer as 23 equals 7, which we know it does not work. So even though, my point is here, you have to, when solving the equations with the expressions, you don't. when there's no equal sign. But when you have the equations and you're solving the equations, absolute value equations, you have to go back and double check your answers. You have to go back and take your answers and plug them into the actual problem to see if it's part of the solution set or not. That's the only way to tell it. It's the only way. A lot of times you can plug them into the answers into your calculator. Just double check your parentheses and absolute value on your calculator on a TI 82, 83, 84. Those are the main calculators I use in my classroom. It is ABS, okay? And you have to push second ABS first. Okay, watch our next video and we're going to take a look at what happens when you only have one solution. You solve it the same way, but it's only one solution. Okay, here we have absolute value, where I'm going to show you what it looks like when you only have one solution in the solution set. If you saw the previous videos, you know that in this video there's something a little bit different in the problem. And that is, we have a variable here on one side, and on the other side we also have a variable. So not only am I going to show you about the one solution, but I'm also going to show you what to do when you have variables on both sides. Okay, we're going to follow the same rules, but to remember those rules, we're going to take a look at, we rewrite the problem as we see it, but without the absolute value. And then we're going to rewrite the second problem, changing the sign on the other side. Okay, the reason I wrote this here and not on the other side is because we have more than just a number on the other side. Okay, we actually have an expression, 5n plus 6. And this will help you remember. Let me go ahead and show you. Let's go ahead and solve the first one. I'm going to remove the original, I'm going to rewrite the original problem without the absolute value. N minus 9 equals 5n plus 6. Now I'm going to solve. I always like to solve my numbers first. So let's see here. I'm going to use a different color. Okay. I need to get all my numbers on one side. So I'm going to move this over to this side. And I have well, let me think about this for a second. The opposite of 5n is a negative 5n. I'm going to move in this case, I want my variable to end up being positive, so I'm going to move this over here so I don't have to do extra work later. So the opposite of n is a negative n, so I'm going to subtract by n on both sides, and this equals 0, and I have negative 9 equals 5 minus 1 is 4n plus 6. Now I need to move my 6 over. Negative 6 on both sides, balance out the equation. And negative, it's the same sign, so you take the sum, which is 15, and I'll give you a negative 15 because your 9 is a negative, equals 4n. I normally solve my numbers first and then my variables, but in this case I wanted my variable to be positive. Okay? It doesn't matter which one you do first. Okay, I need to separate my 4 and n, so I'm going to divide both sides by 4, and I get a negative 15 fourths equals n. I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it back into the original problem. This being the original problem, the big O. Okay. Let me use a different color here. I have the absolute value of negative 15 fourths minus 9 equals 5 times negative 15 fourths plus 6. Now notice n equals negative 15 fourths, so I have to put that wherever I see n, which is on this side and this side. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. I'm going to plug this into my calculator and I'm going to tell you what I'm plugging in. I'm using a TI 82. It's from when I went to college back a long time ago. I never upgraded since then. It does the same work. Okay, I'm going to say open parentheses on helps. Open parentheses, negative 15 divided by 4, close parentheses, minus 9, enter. And I get the absolute value of negative 12 and 75, and the absolute value of 12 and 75. Negative 12.75 is a positive 12.75. Let's do the other side. Okay, so I'm going to say 5 times. Always put when using graphing calculators, always put your fractions inside parentheses. So I plugged in 5 times, open parentheses, negative, don't use a minus sign, 15 divided by 4, close parentheses, plus 6. It's okay to do that. And when I get that, I plug this all into the calculator exactly like you see it. Negative 12 and 75 hundredths. Okay, so obviously these are not equal because of the negative sign, so this is not in the solution set. That's the first problem. Second problem. Are you ready? Okay. Following this here, A equals negative B. Normally, like I said earlier, normally there's just a number on this side, but I wrote this so we remember that even when we have a variable on the other side, we have to apply the negative. Let me show you. I have absolute value of n minus 9 equals, I'm going to apply a negative to this whole entire side, 5n plus 6. I'm going to rewrite it without my absolute value and distributing the negative. So I'm going to remove my absolute value, n minus 9 equals negative, we'll change all the signs. A negative 1 outside the parentheses will change all the signs. So I get a negative 5n and a negative 6. Now I can solve. I'm going to add 5n to both sides. 5 plus 1 is a 6n. Bring down my negative 9. Bring down my equal sign. This equals 0. And I have a negative 6. Now I'm going to add 9 to both sides. Bring down my 6n because I didn't do anything with it. That equals 0. And a 9 and a negative 6 is a positive 3. Divide by 6. That equals 1. N equals, when I divide both by 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. I get 1/2. Now I get to plug this into my original problem. So let's go right here. I have 1/2, absolute value of 1/2 minus 9 equals 5 times 1/2 plus 6. Still an absolute value, and I get negative 8.5 equals half. Now 5 times 1/2, or I can say half of 5 is 2.5 plus 6. I'm going to do this just to show you. 6 plus 2.5 gives you 6, 7, 8, and the 5 stays the same. Okay, so 8.5. Absolute value of negative 8.5 is 8.5. Since these are equal, 1/2 is part of the solution set. So 1/2 is my only answer. Okay, thank you for joining me for absolute value. If you have any questions, drop me an email.